Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And thank you for making it, for coming here tonight. So you have noticed, and welcome to all the people who are following via the live stream. I know that you are many. We received really a very big number of registrations. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here. So we are at St. Thomas Church tonight. And the format of this evening, I'm afraid, is a bit different than the reading groups we've had in the past 3 weeks. Because we are doing this series of 4 lectures in preparation for the Hobart lecture, which will be on October the 15th. And as you know, we are going to have Bishop Mariann Budde, the Bishop of Washington, and poet, theologian Patrick Otuama. And we thought that in preparation for the Hobart lecture, we would do a series of talks and reading groups on the works, the books, the poems of these speakers. So here at St. Thomas, we had 3 reading groups, and there's going to be, no, 2, I think, yes. And we're going to have another one next week on Borders and Belonging, which is the book of Patrick Otuama on commentary on the book of Sarah, around the issues of, what it means to be crossing borders, what does it mean to belong to a people, how this sense of belonging is influenced by loving kindness. This has been one of the major themes of our reflection last week. And I recommend to everyone to read this book. It's not very big, but is immensely thoughtful, like everything that Patrick Otuama writes. I'm afraid that we only have one talk about another equally very profound book, the book by Bishop Mariann Budde on how to be brave. And for this, I'm really, really grateful to Bishop Shin, who accepted to come here tonight and give us a presentation of this book. And an encouragement to read it if you've not done it, or the starting point of a conversation about it. So the format is going to be that Bishop Shin is going to give us a kind of a talk for about half an hour. Then, we probably have the possibility of having 2 or 3 groups of 5, more or less, that, will be able to talk in small groups for 10 minutes about how this resonates with us. And finally, we're going to have a broader conversation. Before I pass on to Bishop Shin, you notice that there is some canapes and coffee, so feel free to help yourself. And the people online, if you see people passing in front of the camera, it's us that serve us, help ourselves with food. During the time that, the 10 minutes when we will have conversation in small groups, I invite the people who are following online to stay on, because after that, we are going to have a moment of sharing and answering questions. So it's going to be, I suppose, profitable for everyone to hear Bishop Shin answering these questions or reacting to these thoughts. So thank you very much, Bishop Shin, for being here tonight. And we are very glad. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What an honor and privilege it is to be with you this evening. It's wonderful folks here at St. Thomas in person, also online. Thank you for joining tonight's session, and thank you, Father Luigi, for the invitation and for this opportunity. So, Bishop Mariann Budde became globally known figure now after her sermon to President Trump on January 1st, 2025. It was a service of prayer for the nation, which was held at the National Cathedral, and that's sort of annual kind of event after with the new president. And in it, she had the courage to actually speak directly to the president, which is a little rare because the preachers sort of don't do that. But she did, and pleading with and urging the president to have compassion and mercy on those who are living in anxiety and fear, and LGBTQ, especially young people, and also immigrants, migrants, who are living in peace and working hard and majority of them anyway, and paying taxes. And that just became, it went, wild globally. And I got phone calls from England. It's like, who is this Bishop Budde? What's going on here? And she became an instant, star and celebrity. So this book, How We Learn to Be Brave, is really a meditation that incorporates her own experiences and personal stories, as well as stories of other people, and talking about the sort of practical guide as well, and hands-on experience. How do we learn to be brave in the moments of challenge? So she offers a really profound meditation on courage and being brave as both personal and as also a communal calling, and that's a very important aspect. And written in the wake of national crises and personal trials, Bishop Budde's work speaks to the heart of what it means to live faithfully in times of uncertainty and fear and division. Rather than presenting courage as an abstract virtue, Bishop Budde grounds it in lived experiences, the stories of her own life, and her personal pastoral encounters, and other Christian leaders, and the history of the Christian faith. And her reflections remind us, the readers, that courage is not innate, nor is it the possession of a select few, but it is a skill we can cultivate and nurture, a practice formed in moments of discernment, vulnerability, and trust. So what I want to talk about this evening, actually, about her take on courage, really, what it means to be brave. But I also want to bring her into a dialogue with another theologian, Paul Tillich, who wrote a book called The Courage to Be back in 1952, and share with you how those two, one who is a giant theologian in the church and one who is a bishop and a spiritual pastoral leader, how they come together in certain aspects, how they converge in their thoughts and ideas. One of Bishop Budde's central insights is that courage is not something we are born with. It's not innate in full measure. There is a seed of courage, perhaps, but it's not in full measure, but something we learn, and often through struggles. And she resists the cultural tendency to glorify courage as a heroic attribute, belonging only to soldiers and martyrs and some exceptional people. Instead, she presents courage as an everyday practice and experience, accessible to all who are willing to risk honesty, vulnerability, and a commitment to what is good and just. And this allows readers to see that courage is not about the absence of fear, but the willingness to act faithfully in the midst of it, or despite to it. And in this way, Bishop Budde situates courage within the broader Christian understanding of discipleship and spiritual formation. A lifelong journey of learning and failing and stumbling, and out of it growing and being stronger. Bishop Budde's reflections are deeply shaped by her role as a bishop, and she talks about it in the book, as well as a pastor leader in a parish, St. John's in Minneapolis. A bishop in Washington, D.C., where she often finds herself as an intersection of spirituality and public witness, public leader. And she writes about the experience of St. John's across the street from the White House, where President Trump showed up and held a Bible upside down, I might add. And she led resistance to that, leading a diocese through political upheaval and standing publicly for justice in such a moment of national crisis. That sermon moment, I think, was a moment of moral clarity for many Christians, especially for the Episcopal Church. Finally, there was a bishop who stood up directly to President Trump and spoke directly to him. It was a moment she probably, she said, she was shaking. She said she was shaking as she was saying this, but she took the opportunity to be brave. And it was really I think, moment of moral clarity for the church. From then on, that moment, I think, inspired many, many people, especially in the Episcopal Church, with sense of clarity of our moral values. A key theme in this book is the idea of decisive moments. So, those times when individuals are called to choose between silence and truth, comfort and risk, passivity and action. And Bishop Budde does not romanticize these moments. She acknowledged the fear, the uncertainty, and the cost they often carry. Yet she also emphasized that they're transformative moments. These moments are transformative. And she talks about that, how those moments changed her and her life. And in naming and claiming these moments, Bishop Budde helps readers recognize that courage is forged not in grand gestures, but in ordinary choices to speak, to act, and sometimes even just to show up for those others who might need our presence. And to remain faithful to one's deepest moral convictions. Bishop Budde is honest, really transparently, refreshingly honest about her vulnerability. The vulnerability she's experienced and the fear she had to deal with in many of these moments. And she admits her own struggles with self-doubt and the temptation to retreat into safety, sometimes to retreat. But rather than portraying bravery as the eradication of fear, she insists that courage means moving forward, going through it, and meeting the challenge in spite of it. And faith in this context becomes the grounding source that allows her and believers to trust in God's presence and strength when their own resources feel insufficient or uncertain or doubtful. The spiritual practices of prayer, discernment, and community support, community setting emerge as essential companions components in the journey of courage. So the community, while decisive moments may be experienced individually, the courage is sustained by the community that nurtures, affirms, and supports the person. Without community, it's very, very difficult, especially the time in which we are living in now. We need each other. We need the community to hold each other up, sustain each other, and strengthen each other up. And Bishop Budde highlights how family, the church, her mentors, and the friends had played a key role in cultivating her own sense of courage and reminding us that no one learns to be courageous entirely alone. In the Christian tradition, this communal aspect is rooted in the body of Christ, where the faith and witness of others can inspire and strengthen our own faith and our own witness to love of Christ. Bishop Budde's message is timely, I believe, in an era marked by political polarizations, racial injustice, climate of anxiety, uncertainty, both economic and personal. Right now, federal government is shut down. We are experiencing a lot of anxiety, uncertainty right now. We have no idea what is going to happen. It's a moment that calls for our courage together, grounded deeply in our faith. And by framing courage as a learned experience rather than an ideal, some kind of idealistic virtue, she empowers us to embrace our own decisive moments with faith and trust. And I'm sure in a moment we'll share our own stories of courage, that those moments where you had to act courageously despite whatever was going on, the fear and anxiety. And her reflections invite all of us Christians and all who belong to a more just and compassionate world to cultivate the small daily acts of courage that over time may shape our lives of meaning and communities of hope. Her work is a reminder that courage is not about fearlessness, but it's about faithfulness. Faithfulness to God, faithfulness to oneself, one's own moral virtues and values, and faithfulness to one another. It is not about personal. It's not about personal heroism, but about communal witness. It is not about grand gestures, but faithful persistence and resistance. So in this way, her book is both personal guide and prophetic call to live with integrity, to act with compassion, and to embody the courage that faith makes possible. The integrity, she talks about it at one point, is really integrating. Integrity means integrating your whole being, all of yourself. Oftentimes we find, I don't know about you, but I find myself sometimes compartmentalizing. We ourselves get fragmented. This part is being a bishop, this part is being that, this part is at home. There are forces around us that actually want to fragment us, and we respond to that by compartmentalizing. Being a person of integrity means you always bring your entire being, the whole integrated being, to every situation and every call that you answer to. So, moving on to Paul Tillich, The Courage to Be. It's a book that's been around much longer. 1952 was it was first published. Some of you might have read it. A lot of seminarians read it because it is one of those foundational books. And I read it in my seminary years, and I've kept it and read it again and again over the years. Written against the backdrop of two world wars, 1952. He's coming out. He lived through World War II, so coming out of those wars, the rise of totalitarian regime. He watched the Nazi regime arising, the disillusionment of modernity. Tillich's reflections in this book address the fundamental human struggle with anxiety, meaninglessness, and despair. His thesis is simple yet profound. The deepest act of courage is not merely to endure suffering or confront danger, but to affirm one's own being, the whole being, in the face of non-being. This is one of his phrases. There are two very important phrases. Accepting or affirming one's own being in the face of non-being. In the face of non-being means that there are forces within, inner spiritual forces, and outer forces that actually try to make us non-human, really, inhumane. For that, you've experienced that. Sometimes downgrading ourselves and living in anxiety. That's a non-being state. Or outer forces that say, well, you don't matter. You know, what he sees is that it takes courage to recognize that fullness of being within you in the face of such state of non-being. And this affirmation, he argues, is ultimately grounded in the faith in another Tillich's praise, the God above God. A reality that transcends traditional theism, traditional idea of God, and speaks to the deepest longings of the human spirit. The idea of grounding in being God above God means that whatever understanding and imagination idea we have about God is finite, is limited. There's a God beyond however we understand God to be. So we have to reach for that or dig deeper into that and see that and even transcend our own understanding of God to get to God above God. It is really saying that recognizing our own finitude and limitedness and digging deeper into that human spirit. So Tillich begins by identifying the central what he called the existential challenge of human life, the experience of anxiety in the face of all these forces that tries to tell us that you're not a real full being, you're not a full human. All the forces, both internally and out in the outer world. And unlike fear, which has concrete object, we're afraid of something or someone, anxiety arises from the awareness that human existence is finite and precarious. It has to do with the notion that realizing that, oh my gosh, I'm going to die one day. We have many number of, especially artists, I think creative people have the fear of anxiety about death. So they're constantly, they go into this drive, right? And they have many examples of that. They're coming to realizing the awareness that human existence is finite and precarious. And so he distinguishes three primary forms of this existential anxiety. Anxiety of fate and death. That awareness that life is subject to contingency and mortality. We have no control over that. The anxiety of guilt and condemnation. The recognition of moral failure and the possibility of the ultimate rejection. And the anxiety of meaninglessness and emptiness. The modern crisis, he calls it. The modern crisis in which traditional values and worldviews collapse, leaving the individual without ultimate purpose. And that's where it comes to, so the whole of the age of anxiety, I don't know if you might have heard that, age of anxiety came in. That's what he's speaking to. There are three forms of these existential anxieties that he's talking about. So for Tillich, these forms of anxieties are unavoidable. And some you might have experienced some of those yourself. It's that sense of meaninglessness and despair, and that gets you into depression, for instance, or guilt and condemnation. Guilt, you feel guilty about something, you begin to like be ashamed, and then next thing you know, you're scolding yourself and deeper into that anxiety of being, and then fear of that anxiety about being rejected. The rejection. So, and maybe not in a big way, but in small doses, I'm sure in your life, many of us have experienced some of that. And it's unavoidable. It's part of who we are as human beings as we live our life. And question then is how do we respond to that? So he defines courage as a self-affirmation of one's being in spite of non-being. So self-affirmation, you need to recognizing, seeing yourself, affirming yourself, that you are the fullness of being that is in you, as created by God. God is created to be fully human, full being, despite all the forces that try to tell you otherwise. And he's saying that takes a spiritual courage to do that, spiritual and moral courage to do that. And so courage is not the denial of anxiety, but the decision to live faithfully and meaningfully in the midst of it. So anxiety is real. So just simply taking that on and then having the courage to live faithfully and meaningfully. And I think many people who have lived through the World War II and lived through Holocaust and they've written about these kind of things. Where do we find meaning? To find meaning despite of horrors that's going on. And that's what I think what we're searching for. I don't know about you, but I am searching for God right now. Where's God? Right? Where's the meaning of in terms of what is all going on here? Yeah. So in the midst of anxiety, despite all this, still having the courage and finding a way to live faithfully and meaningfully. So Tillich distinguishes between different modes of courage. The courage of individual self-affirmation, the courage of participation, in which one affirms one's being through a connection of community and culture and tradition. So it's not just about oneself now, you need to have a communal connection. And the courage of acceptance, in which one faces guilt, failure, and death without denial, but embracing the reality of human limitation. Simply, it is what it is, and embracing it. And each form is valuable but limited. And Tillich ultimately argues true courage then, true courage requires a transcendent ground beyond the finite. And that's where he brings in God above God. So this is the climax Tillich's argument. For him, the ultimate courage is the courage of faith. In order to live courageously, you have to have faith, and the faith requires courage. So in this, it's not a thick book, it's a very thin book, but half the book is about courage of faith. It's really, really, I recommend it if you haven't read it. It's the courage to accept the acceptance. He's again, accept acceptance. That is to say, courage to accept that I am accepted. It takes courage to accept that God has accepted me with all my limitedness, my finitude, and my shame and guilt and all of that. God accepted me. And it's not enough that God accepts me, but I have to accept that God accepted me. That is going deeper into where God above God. So faith in this sense is not the assertion of dogmatic beliefs or intellectual assent, but the surrender to the ground of being itself. The surrendering to God is kenosis. The surrendering ourselves, whole being, completely to God. So entering into that, the God above God, the divine reality that lies beyond our own finitude, our finite concepts, understanding of God, but God who is nevertheless who is also present in our midst. So traditional understanding of theism often fails when people lose faith in the image of personal deity who intervenes in history. And you all maybe, I know, faithful people, but I'm sure you've had conversations with especially those who are searching, or it's about younger people who just, how does God work? Where's God? They cannot understand because they have an image of God that does not work. And what Tillich is saying, of course it does not work. You have to go dig deeper and go transcend your own understanding of God. And trust in this God of God is to discover a source of courage that is in you, the courage that transcends the anxieties that we experience. And the courage of faith is not a triumph of our willpower or a denial of fear and anxiety. Instead, it's the act of receiving one's being from the ground of being. That is to say, it's exactly what Jesus has taught. It's just simply receiving, Jesus handing himself over to God. We talk about that, right, in kenosis in Philippians 4. Humbling and handing himself over is exactly what it means also receiving your own self from God as God created you to be. And it allows one to face death with trust that life participates in the something beyond, something eternal, and to face guilt with the assurance of forgiveness, and to face meaninglessness with confidence that ultimate meaning is given, not created. Ultimate meaning is given, not created. In this sense, faith is not irrational, but it is existential necessity. So in a sense, what he's saying is that we really cannot get through this life without faith. And it takes courage to live that faith. So you can see already the consonance between Bishop Budde and Paul Tillich, right? When Tillich and Bishop Budde are brought into dialogue with each other and read together, they illuminate one another. Tillich offers ontological depth and theological understanding, undergirding, to Bishop Budde's practical insights and spiritual insights. Tillich's articulation of existential anxiety provides theological framework, understanding of why courage is always necessary and why it cannot be reduced to mere willpower. And Bishop Budde in turn brings Tillich's abstraction into concrete focus, showing that how courage is cultivated in ordinary daily life of discipleship and embodied practices. And one interesting convergence is their shared rejection of superficial notion of courage. That courage is not some heroism or willpower, but it is both. Courage is not a denial of fear or a capacity, but is a capacity to act and live faithfully in the midst of fear and anxiety, despair, and meaninglessness. And Tillich sees this as grounded in the divine acceptance of human being, and Bishop Budde sees it as a developed practice through spiritual practices and communal support. And another point of resonance is their attention to vulnerability. And Tillich also emphasized that anxiety is inherent. And Bishop Budde underscores that courage emerges precisely through that vulnerability, through struggles that we experience. So this recognition, this shared recognition, challenges triumphalist and heroic depictions of courage and portrays courage as humble and honest and grace-filled. And finally, both situate courage within a larger vision of justice and faithfulness. They go hand in hand. Bishop Budde insists that courage manifests in public witness, moral integrity, and acts of justice. And Tillich insists that courage is faith in God, who sustains our being, our very core being. So they complement each other in that regard. And together they suggest that courage is both inward, accepting ourselves as accepted, and outward, acting for the sake of God's kingdom of justice in this world. One of the experiences I've had was when we had what time is it? I think we're okay. We're okay time-wise? We're okay time-wise? Okay. When I was going through the discernment process years ago, it was a moment of crisis for me. My sister had just died of car accident. She was only 20 years old. My parents were totally in complete emotional disarray, and I was completely lost. And I was angry with God. Faith, what the heck is that? Who is God? Where's God in this? And as I struggled through that, and my mentor, spiritual mentor, gave me a Bible verse, which is always been in me, and Ecclesiastes 7:13, I believe, but it is Ecclesiastes 7. What God has made crooked, who can make it straight? He just gave me this. Alan, reflect on it. Think about it. What God has made crooked, who can make it straight? And I went home and prayed it, thought about it for a long time. I still do from time to time. I'm reminded of that. A life is never straight, isn't it? It's crooked, and his boss guy, basically the writer of Ecclesiastes, is saying, well, yeah, God has made it crooked. You have no control. You don't try to straighten it, just follow the path. What God has made crooked. And that, reflecting upon that verse gave me, actually, I think, courage to come out of that anger, the despair, anxiety, and fear. Fear of my own death. She was only 20 years old. So it gave me courage at that time to come out of it. And then what was interesting is that I went to my priest and I said, I just had this very interesting, I don't still understand it, but it was a very interesting and amazing experience. And I told her all my story, what happened. Well, she had known that my sister had died, but that journey, and you know, I think actually I think I might be called to be a priest. And my priest at the time told me, like, she smiled at me, she said, I've been praying for this for 2 years, Alan. And what that taught me is one, this discernment and courage. Acting courage requires discernment. That's what Bishop Budde talks about. It requires discernment. Discernment requires community. It requires mentors. It requires friends. It requires other people to walk that journey with you. It's never private, individual journey alone. You may start as a very deeply personal, private journey, but at some point, in order to step out of your own cocoon, you have to reach out and build your community and connect the community. And both, I find it very interesting in talking about this courage that both Bishop Budde and Tillich talks about very poignantly about the need for communal connection in order to live courageously, and both living with the courage of faith and having those moments where courage is required. It needs the community to help to nurture and bring that and support that. And so courage is not simply a heroic act. And you know, there's a lot of talk today. You know, I think who was it? I think it was Hexeth who recently said, you know, we need proud Christians. No, we don't need proud Christians. We need confident Christians. We don't need Christians who are ego-filled and proud Christians. We need Christians who are humble, who are confident in their faith. That's what Bishop Hudson, Bishop of Suffragan Bishop of Canterbury, who will be here actually in a few weeks. She talks about being confident. We need confident Christians today. And confident Christian means that having the courage to stand up, having the moral clarity. Moral clarity. What are the moral values that is non-negotiable for you? There comes a moment you have to have that clarity, and we have come to that moment. We have come to that moment where we have to be clear about our values and not be defensive about it, right? So it's time, I think. We're living in a time where we are called to be courageous and brave about who we are as Christians, but as human beings, and who we are as followers of Jesus, and be ready to live the life of the courage of faith. Thank you.
waiting for the microphone for the people who are following by the live stream. So my suggestion is that we had a lot to think about, and I'd like this to become a bit, like a shared conversation. In the meantime, if you want to help you with coffee and everything, we probably, I'd like to ask you to react in terms of what do you think about when you hear a call to be brave or a call for courage? I mean, obviously there is something which is connected to the way we deal with our existential anxiety. There is a political element in it. But what do you hear when the courage to be brave, the call to courage? So I think it would be good to have a moment of sharing about this. One of the elements which Bishop Shin has underlined, emphasized, which I think it's very, very important, is part of the conversation we are having we had in the past few weeks, is the importance of community in this call to confidence. Is the belonging to the community that really heightens and helps us to build this confidence. So do you have any thought or any reaction, particularly on this point? So how do you hear a call to be brave, a call to be courageous? We need a moment of thinking. Yes. Yeah. Why don't you? No, please.
Okay.
Please do. Please do.
I had, one thing I just wanted to say that.
Say your name.
My name is Emma.
Emma.
And I like that you said, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but that it takes courage to know that you're accepted by God. That was one thing that I really liked. But I did have a question, which is sometimes it's felt in my life like courage comes into being when I'm having to endure something difficult, very difficult. And I've never really thought of it so much as courage rather than as endurance, which I've done a lot of in my life. And so much good comes out of that sometimes because you reach for help somehow, and you reach out for things that are very good for your soul in the end. But I wonder about the difference between endurance and finding courage that way and just courage in a more communal way, because I think I've had more courage personally than maybe in a communal way.
Thank you. I'd like to hear more voices a little bit before we
My name's Chris. I think at the most basic level, courage comes about when I'm resisting the voice inside of me that says, no, don't do that. Like, don't step outside of yourself. Don't try a new experience. Don't try to reach out to someone who you don't know. I mean, I think tend to be a pretty introverted person, so there's usually that resistance. And I find that every time I've kind of broken that barrier with another person and reached out, there's a reward at the end. There's always, some kind of growth and expansion in myself, but I still feel that resistance every single day. So I guess on the micro level, that's what courage can be.
Thank you. Does anyone else wants to add something? So there's Michael.
Can I, before I go, just want to address that endurance bit.
Yeah.
So Bishop Budde have the chapter on perseverance, virtue of perseverance, and I think that's what you're talking about. And she says that that in and of itself is courage, to be able to endure and persevere, or having grit, right? In and of itself is courage, I think. And Tillich would probably say the similar way, in that in order to struggle through life, and when it's so challenging and it is persistent, and you persist through that, that is really holding on to that being within you that is accepted by God, and not letting it go, not giving up ever. That in and of us is courage. I think that's how they would put it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Hello, my name is Michael. Also,
It's on.
like Bishop Shin was saying, that life is challenging. Life is challenges, something like that. And I'd like to know the difference between courage and perseverance.
Yeah.
Like, is there like the difference between the courage and perseverance, or is it like the same?
They're similar. I think I think what Bishop Budde would say is as I just said, it takes courage to be persevering. Perseverance requires courage, because it is not giving up. Isn't it? You endure and you persevere through it and not giving up. So that in and of itself courage. They're not exactly the same thing, but the perseverance requires that courage.
Oh, is it like similar?
Yeah, it's similar. They're both virtues, right?
Oh, I see.
Right.
My name is Pim. Thank you
Hi,
very
Pim.
much for this wonderful talk. I think that taking action of some kind, showing courage, has real consequences in our time. And I've read that Bishop Budde now has a security detail. She gets death threats as a result of this sermon.
Right.
And probably
Yep.
other things.
Yep.
So I was struck by something you said early on in your talk, which was, and I may be misquoting you, you said, finally there was a bishop who spoke up. And I wonder if you think that more bishops should speak up, more clergy should speak up about the conditions that we're finding ourselves in, and that seem to be getting worse and worse.
I think there are many bishops who are speaking up in their own contexts. I think Bishop Hyatt and I have sent out statements about what's going on, and we're careful about not churning it out every day or every week, because then it gets a bit too much. But when the important things happen, we do speak to and most, I think, I would, as far as I know, and I think pretty much most all bishops do in their own diocesan context. What I meant was, as finally the bishop spoke up, is like directly to Donald Trump, and she had the opportunity and she took the courage to do it, right? And I mean, not many bishops get that kind of opportunity. So she's at the Washington National Cathedral. She had that opportunity and she took it, and I think that took a lot of courage. And that was I think for me, a moment of catalyst for the whole church, and all the bishops too. We were very proud of her, and worried about her too. But the fact that she and she was articulate. It was not a polemic, rhetoric, but it was speaking directly to the gospel, to the love of Christ and the gospel good news of Jesus Christ. That's what she did, and modeled what it means to preach the gospel in that moment. And if she did that, so that's what I meant, right?
Thank you. For me, something it's struck me of Bishop Budde and chimes with what Chris has said, is the fact that this is not a one-off. One is not capable of that kind of presence and courage. But it was not any sort of courage, because the way she did it was also incredibly. Oh, the microphone is off.
Move to your right. So
Oh, because I'm not in the vision. Sorry, I'm not in the vision. Yes, it was not. It was as you pointed out. It was an intervention that was thoughtful, measured, clear. The moral clarity you mentioned several times. it's a combination which cannot be improvised. No. It's not something that, you decide 1 second, I have this opportunity, today I'm going to do it. It's something that is built through small acts of courage. This is why I think that what you said, Chris, is very important. Small acts of confidence, small acts of, because if you're not really, compassionate in your daily life, if you're not really, several times she said, have pity on, on people, etc. The thing that gives you authority, in a sense, when you say that, is the fact that you practice it in your own life, in small gestures, in small ways. But also the confidence. I think that the confidence, I can imagine how shaking she must have been on that moment. And yet she had the strength to do this. But this also is something that we build daily through, trying to have that confidence, that clarity, that discernment, that pity, in a good sense, that compassion, rather, on a daily basis. So that's a point which really struck me when I heard her, and then I got to know a little bit more about her. That she didn't improvise this. She came from a life in which she has practiced this for a long time. We have time probably for another few more questions. You wanted to ask something? Say your name.
Hi. Hello, I'm Alexandra, and I see about being brave and courage also when you have to deal with coworkers, colleagues that are very difficult on the job, that you still have to handle it, but in a way that's professional and that, that's like culturally accepted. So you need to be brave and courageous for that.
Thank you,
No,
Alexandra.
that's a good point, and I like what you said about being professional and a person of being a person of integrity, not losing your own integrity and dignity. I think that's really important. And we're living in a culture where everybody's reacting to each other, right? And free speech has become say whatever you want, and it's all fine. Well, maybe in a theoretical level, maybe that's what it means to have a free speech. But on the other hand, what about spiritually? On a spiritual level, what does it mean to have that gift? Because I think it's a gift, right? Free speech, like free will. God has given us freedom. Freedom, I think, is a gift. It's not something we are privileged or entitled to. It's a gift of grace from God. Freedom, free will, free speech, therefore, is also a gift, right? And what that means is that we have the responsibility to steward it and use it wisely and use it rightly in a way that preserves our own integrity and dignity. It is also respecting the dignity and integrity of the other person. We're not practicing that at all right now, and that's one of the problems we have in the culturally and socially in this nation right now. I think free speech has just become, entitlement, free for all entitlement. It's a battleground, unfortunately. So you're right. I think it takes courage.
The other day, one of my
coworkers
was going to steal a gift from me, and I had to find a way to keep my gift
Yep.
and try to be, professional. And
That's right. No, it isn't. It isn't easy. That's right.
Another question or another observation?
Thank you. I'm Heather Goodchild, and very much appreciate all of the effort you all have made to make this possible. In the media interviews that Bishop Budde did following the service of prayer,
Right.
I think I remember her saying that she felt a responsibility to speak directly to the president about the message of the gospel,
That's right.
because
She did say that.
She's the most senior person there. She had the responsibility to make the address. The purpose of the service was him and his presidency, and the location was the house of prayer and worship. And that if she didn't do it, it would be a signal moment lost.
Yeah, she did talk about that. Yes, thank you. And she did, I think did she talk about it in this book? I'm not sure now, because but she in multiple interviews, I think she talks about how she debated. She wasn't sure whether she should do it or not, and then finally, I think she decided to say that, to read that in her sermon, and she does not regret it at all. And I think, and of course, she also said, I owe him no apology for saying that. And so you're right, and it was a moment of, I think it was definitely a courageous moment of, courage for her, because it was a moment of witness to the gospel. She didn't do it because with a grandstanding. She did it really humbly, and in a very matter-of-fact way, and very pastorally too, actually, I might add, and really trying to appeal to humanity in him. There must be some humanity in him. I think that's what she was trying to appeal to, right?
I'm wondering about. Oh, I see. Sorry. I'm wondering about the place of truth.
Yes. Good.
When I think of the word courage, you have to have courage to speak from a position of truth.
Yeah.
And we're struggling right now with what constitutes truth.
Mm.
We have our truth as grounded in the gospel. We also have Christian nationalists who think that what they espouse is truth. We have all of these different perspectives that claim they have the truth. And they're courageous in stating their truths. Could you tell us how we are to reconcile all of these different truths?
My goodness. I don't know about reconcile these different truths, because it comes down to it at some point where some that is claimed to be truth is not truth. Some that claim to be truth is maybe not whole truth, right? And I don't think we can ever have. It's like God above God. I don't think the truth is beyond. There's always. This is why I think philosophically and spiritually, the quest for truth is never ending, right? And as far as I know, philosophically, since Plato, what 2,000 some years ago, we've been at it. And I would say probably even before, right? And human beings have been questing for truth, since probably the beginning, and we haven't quite got to it. And that is also what is so beautiful about this notion of truth. There's always something beyond, right? And just like God. So that is why God is truth. Yes, His truth lies always behind our own finite understanding of what it is. And we've now come to, they call it post-truth, but I'm not sure about that concept. I think truth is still truth. We're still questing it. We just haven't, we'll never fully grasp it. We'll always get a partial picture of it, I think. Do we necessarily want to reconcile all these different claims? Some maybe we can say, okay, we can probably work with that, but some probably not. I think we need to discern that this is where I think perhaps Tillich would actually say, is that the quest, the deep spiritual quest of the God above God is exactly that journey. Always not accepting, not being not ending with whatever final we think with final answer. There's never a final answer, right? So that's a big question what you're asking, but yes, but that also takes courage too. I think in order to keep at it, rather than saying, okay, I finally got it. This is it. I got the answer. Well, you don't. Nobody has the final answer, right? Even those good people among us, not really. There's always something more to dig, right? The thing about this, the aspect of truth, though, this is one interesting aspect, I think, is that I think it was who's the one who wrote After Virtue? McGrath? McIntyre, not McGrath. McIntyre in that book said human beings are storytelling animals who always aspire to truth, who tell stories that aspire to truth. Okay, and stories that inspire us, stories that draw us in, are the stories that always aspire to something that bigger, transcendent truth, something that's deep, meaningful, transcendent. Other stories that do not, well, they're not inspire us or interest us, right? So what McIntyre is saying is that human beings are storytelling animals. We tell stories who tell stories that aspire to truth. And I think that the truth lies actually not in sort of one single strand, but I think truth lies in the whole of community, whole of collective, whole of humanity. And I say this because we're slightly veering off the topic of courage, but it's still related. I think there was a TED Talk speaker who Chimamanda Ngozi. I don't know. Does anybody know? She's this African speaker. She had millions of viewers of her talk, and she won this prestigious award for herself too. And this is what she says about really history, but this is about truth. Is that they're talking about storytelling, and the story, this problem with single story is that it is not that it is untrue, but it's incomplete. It's never complete. Which means the whole story requires all stories. You see, I'll give you an example. Right now, the white Christian nationalists are trying to whitewash all the stories of people of color, right? They want to close down African American History Museum of African American History. They've got rid of Jackie Robinson off the government website. Pauli Murray is off the website. They want to get rid of the whole chattel slavery story. They want to whitewash all the stories of people of color except white national story. And the problem with that is that that story is not so much that story is untrue, but it's only just a single story that is incomplete. It does not tell the whole truth, does it? So it seems to me that what McIntyre and maybe Chimamanda Ngozi are getting at is the truth requires stories of everybody. Your story and my story together will make a a higher level of truth, not just my own. Right? Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get to the connection between being courageous
Yeah.
and speaking the truth.
Yes.
I think that Budde was so effective.
Absolutely.
because, she was speaking from a very powerful kind of truth.
Yep.
The gospel
Oh yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
And that gave her courage.
That took her courage, and she did it with love. You know, Paul says, "Speak truth with love," right? And that's what she did. Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you very much, Bishop Shin, for taking the time at the end of a long day. Thank you to you all, you know, because it's been a long day for all of you, for all of us. But the last thing you said resonates, I think, with Padre Otuama, because in his work for reconciliation, he says that one of the most important things is sharing stories.
Yep.
So, and he has put together people who hate each other, you know, at the highest level. Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland had been killing each other literally for dozens and dozens of years, and he really believes in the power of listening. Finding spaces where people can share their stories, their grievances, and hopefully make, you know, come to a more complete story. But thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you for all the people who have followed via the live stream. And next week, we are going back to our format of reading group here at St. Thomas, which will be in person only. We're going to see the last section of the book, Borders and Belonging, with Padre Otuama. And then we'll have a pause and we'll have a different theme for the reading group later in November. So thank you for being here, and I think we can express our appreciation to Bishop Shin.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There are still some canapes, etc., but you have to take everything. Nothing has to remain.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much. Thank you for taking the time of being here and sharing this.